Make sure to subscribe to the podcast and to leave us a good review. The more reviews we get, the bigger our audience gets, and the bigger our audience gets, the better this podcast will become. Hey, Ricky, let us know ways people can get in touch with us.
Sure, Tim. We've got Twitter, which is at thirdpartyrep, R-E-P. We've got Instagram at thirdparty.repair. Facebook, facebook.com/thirdpartyrepair. And email thirdpartyrepair@gmail.com.
Okay, here we go again for another Third Party Repair podcast. Ricky, how are you?
I am not bad, Tim. Thank you very much, Tim. Where did you go?
I went home to my hometown of Adelaide in the south of Australia for a couple of weeks. We're lucky enough to be able to travel here. I don't know if that's still... Can you travel everywhere where you are? Like, can you just cruise around the country if you want?
Starting yesterday, the 12th of April, yeah, we're officially allowed to open non-essential shops and we're allowed to travel around, so...
Oh, that's good news.
Kinda, yeah.
Lucky you.
Yeah, so lucky we're allowed to travel now. Yeah. Talking of travelling, I treated myself actually since we've last spoken. I got myself a electric skateboard. I used to skate when I was younger, so.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's about I've got a 2 mile journey to work, and it's along a track if I'm not driving my car. And I was watching a Louis Theroux documentary on a Sunday night, and my wife fell asleep, and I don't know how, but I ended up looking at adverts on YouTube, and before I knew it, I had purchased a rather expensive electric scooter. But it's been quite fun the weather's been nice. It's been quite fun to get out on. They're actually an Australian company, Evolve, the one I got.
Oh, right. Nice. Yeah. I do see them around a lot, actually, and every time I see someone whiz past them, I'm kind of quietly jealous. It looks so easy and convenient to get around.
You're thinking, what a cool guy, right?
Yeah, pretty much. I'm thinking that, how do I become just like that man? All right, without further ado, should we get into this week's podcast? Again, we're getting straight into this here, and I'm just looking at some notes that we've been taking throughout the last couple of weeks of being apart, and a lot of IRP, independent repair provider news lately. One in particular is, since we last spoke, the extent of the IRP program was to the USA. I guess that was a couple of years ago that first sort of happened, and then Europe was is that a year ago now? I feel like almost Europe 6 months maybe.
It was about a year ago.
Yeah, and now worldwide, it seems that they just went, okay, let's just unleash this beast across the world. Now, I haven't seen how worldwide, quote unquote, worldwide is. I don't know if that is like literally 50 countries or something like that, but it is definitely in Australia. We hadn't had it here before, and it's now become it's on their website, available to apply for. And what do you think about that? Have you got thoughts on that? All of a sudden, were they testing it out before? What do you think?
Yeah, so I mean, the United States is obviously their home market. It's the most important one to them. I've got a link from Rumours, which I will include in the description of the podcast so that you can click it and get reference to what we're talking about. But in there, there's a lot. Australia obviously included. There's a load of countries in there. They're in the article. But the most interesting thing for me is it says, according to Apple, there are more than 1,500 independent repair provider locations across the United States, Canada, and Europe. Now, the people that sign up to this, they obviously sign the non-disclosure agreement, so you don't hear very much from them. But 1,500 is quite a meaty number. I think that's bigger than any. That obviously includes the franchises that have signed up, but that's bigger than any pre-existing independent repair network. So you could go as far as to say that they currently have the biggest repair network for mobile phones potentially in the world.
That's very quickly that's happened. My understanding is that the terms, from what I have heard, are reasonably open. Like, they're not as closed as you might think Apple might be with this kind of stuff. They are coming to the party a little bit, or is there a catch? What do you think?
So in 2019, when it was first announced, I don't think the terms were too favourable for the independent repair shop. But in the space of 2 years, they've obviously they've signed up 1,500. And you've got to remember, they don't accept everyone. They will reject people. They won't even get people to contract stage. And I would imagine that speaking to that many repair shops, they would have learned quite a lot. So from what I understand, the contract has evolved. And whilst I won't go as far as to sing Apple's praises, they are moving and they're trying to make it work for the repair shop, not just for themselves. It's still a bit controlling, but it's nice to see. It's nice to see them open up a little bit and sort of and grow it. And I know people quite closely. I've got some quite close friends that have signed up that have been independent repair providers for quite some time, a few months now, and yeah, they enjoy it. They sing its praises. They say it's good.
Mm. And do you know if these places are still, or maybe they never were, are they still using aftermarket parts in parallel with the authorised parts?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen any of their contracts, but they've told me that they, because they're not allowed to show me, but they've told me that they are allowed to use aftermarket parts. So they can use, they can still use aftermarket parts, but they can also give the customer the option of using the Apple parts themselves. I think refurbished parts, because some of those still have logo on and some of them still have QR codes, serial numbers on. That's a bit of a grey area. And I know that they don't all use refurbished parts, but I know that some of them do. But in effect, all that Apple is really doing is they're becoming a wholesale supplier of parts with the lock-in tool of the serialization in order for people to re-enable software functions on devices. So it's very clever. It's a nice little system that they've got going. It's not very consumer friendly, and I am worried about what's going to happen to it in the next couple of years as it scales and as they get more people signing up. But we'll just have to see where it goes, I guess.
Well, it's more of what it seems to be unfolding in much the way, if people were to go back and listen to us talking, well, when did we first do this? Is it a year ago now? I don't know if it's that long, but it
was over a year, I think, but it was before lockdown, wasn't it? And you and me, Tim, we've basically documented this as it's happened. So historically, it'll be a nice thing to point back to. Where it goes from here, who knows?
Well, let's hope it goes into a positive direction, the direction that would be best for everyone, including not only repair shops, independent or otherwise, but also your general public and end users as well, which is obviously the main thing we want to take care of here. So I'm trying to work out we've got a bunch of show notes here that we've been putting down, and I'm be honest with you.
You don't know where we are.
To the next section.
I rejumbled them for you because they lead into each other. So the first thing, this was on Monday the 29th of March. We got the update from Apple that they were expanding their independent repair provider location. And then it says the 29th of March, it was the same day, but it broke the very next day. And that was, I will read the headline out to you. And this is the side of all of this that really peeves me. It really gets me. It says, Apple lobbies against right to repair bill over privacy concerns of third-party repair shops accessing user data. So, Tuesday, March the 30th, that one was, and Monday, March the 29th, the earlier one was. So on the Monday, we got a bit of a carrot dangled in front of us that Apple were really great and they were expanding the independent repair, the IRP program. And then the very next day it was Apple are lobbying against right to repair over privacy concerns. So when you dig into this article and you dig into what it's actually about, I'll take a quote here from Cameron Dimitri, the Regional Executive Director of TechNet, a trading group representing Apple, HP and Honeywell in committee hearings on the bill. Who says that his clients are concerned about the potential exposure that third-party repair shops will have to personal users' data when repairing devices. Dimitri warns that opening up repair access and freedom could lead to unintended consequences. Cameron Dimitri, the organisation's regional executive director, said manufacturers worried about unvetted third parties having access to the personal information stored in consumer electronics. He said the bill had the potential for troubling unintended consequences, including serious adverse security, privacy, and safety risks. Now, that article does end with noting the independent repair provider program. And before we talk about that, Tim, and get your thoughts on it, I put this out into one of the Facebook groups and I got an article from November 2019 with the headline, "An Apple Store employee helped a customer by texting himself an intimate photo from her phone." This is an article from the Washington Post, and just to read out a little bit from this, the user scrubbed her device of all social media, financial and banking apps before getting her screen repaired November the 4th, and intended to delete all her photos too, but she ran out of time. Upon arriving, she handed her phone to an employee who began messing around with it for quite a while, she wrote the next day. "I didn't really pay any mind to it because I just figured he's doing his job, looking into my insurance info or whatever," she wrote on Facebook. "He asked for my passcode twice in that time frame, which I, at the time, didn't think anything of." It goes on to say that it turns out Fuentes' initial concerns were legitimate. When she got home, Fuentes turned on her phone and noticed a text that had been sent to an unknown number, she wrote. The message's contents were even more harrowing. Fuentes alleged that the Apple employee had gone through her photos, retrieved a private picture, and texted it to himself. At the end of the article, in an emailed statement, Apple told the Washington Post, "We are grateful to the customer for bringing this deeply concerning situation to our attention. Apple immediately launched an internal investigation and determined that the employee acted far outside the strict privacy guidelines to which we hold all Apple employees. He is no longer associated with our company." This, in effect, confirms that the Apple employee did indeed text himself an intimate photo from the end customer. So it's a bit sad to see a day after they're telling us that the IRP program is expanding and they're being pro-right to repair, the day after the Cameron Dimitri, on behalf of Apple, putting out a bit of a fear-mongering quote, making out that third-party repairers, independent third-party repairers that have not been vetted, are a security and privacy risk for end customers, when in fact there is proof. I'm sure you'll be able to find proof of third-party repairers doing similar things, but there's also proof of authorised, vetted employees and companies doing the same thing. I didn't have to search hard for this.
There's no guarantee just because something's... there's no guarantee that just because somebody's been vetted internally inside their own company, that they're not going to be an individually malicious person with their own intentions and, seeing if they can get away with something, which they obviously got caught. So, to start with, when you said that what was the guy's name that from Apple who was
it wasn't from Apple,
to be careful of
Cameron Dimitri, the regional executive director of TechNet. TechNet are one of those third-party bodies which act as a representative of the technology companies to speak on their behalf, because if Apple were to come out directly and say some of the things that TechNet says, it might hurt the Apple brand. So rather than hurt their brands, they do it for a third party like TechNet. I don't believe TechNet are the only third party representative body like this, but it's definitely one of them, yeah.
So maybe I'm slow, but just to clarify, was he saying that in the context that just... Was he referring to this idea that a human that hasn't been vetted might actually do something like what you just said, or was he referring to the fact that somehow it's a security risk, just anybody using somebody's phone, to do repairs? What's he?
It says manufacturers worried about unvetted third parties, that bit is in quotes, having access to the personal information stored in consumer electronics. So, I mean, it's a bit hypocritical and it's hypocritical. And also, it does beg the question, whether you're vetted or you're not vetted, why is there no... I mean, if you look at the Mac historically that had diagnostics mode where you could run basic diagnostics on the device, why, if the manufacturers are that bothered about the personal data on their consumer electronics on their customers' devices, why is there nothing like that on inside iOS? Why is there nothing like that so that unvetted, so that end users can run diagnostics on their device and find out what's working and what's not working? Why is that? If they were that bothered, why does something like that not exist? It just begs the question for me.
Yeah, I agree. It also makes me think, what are they doing to vet these people anyway, and how complex can that be to just extend that outside of their own? I imagine that anyone who's just signed into the IRP program has had to do something like this along the way. So I'm not too sure of that, but at the end of the day, if Apple is granting, okay, so we'll sell parts outside of it, are they and privacy is of their concern, wouldn't they also at the same time be having people sign something, whether it be the business owner of the independent repair store or the staff that are there, or even all the way through to anyone that could possibly be accessing an Apple device as an independent repair shop? Wouldn't they be making them sort of sign something saying, hey, look, I won't go through people's stuff and I won't send text messages with private photos to my own personal phone, etc., etc., etc. Anyway, I mean, what are they talking about? Are they vetting them for like their police checks and all of this? How deep are they actually going on all of the individual staff at Apple anyway? And at the same time, why can't they just do that across the third party sort of independent repair store chain of shops anyway? It does. You're right. It's muddying the water. He's muddying the water there with what, or the TechNet person's muddying the water with what they're saying to just make it look like smearing independent repair as if it's like the only possible way that anyone could actually have their privacy actually remain intact, and monopolizing privacy for themselves as if Apple is the only company that can possibly
exactly
do that in the first place. And then you've just come out with a smoking barrel that's not even the case anyway, right?
Exactly. I mean, even if they vetted people and they got people to sign contracts, how are they enforcing that? And how could you enforce that when you've got an engineer or a repair technician that's doing them all day? So what we do in-house as part of our process is when a device arrives with us, the first thing we do is we restore it. So the customer is told prior to us receiving the device that it's going to be restored, and when we receive it, we restore it. That way, we cannot, even if my employees have not accessed any of the information, but the customer were to turn around and say that they had, it would be an argument that would just be a waste of time. And it would be an argument that the customer, if they really thought, even if they couldn't prove it, if they really thought it had happened, I would as well. I would fight my corner to the end. So what we do is we restore it when it arrives. Now, with the authorized process, I don't believe the phones are restored when they're given in for repair, but Find My iPhone is removed so that if the device needs to be swapped out, then they can reset it and then they can give you a replacement and you can go on your way with a replacement phone. For their repairs, I don't believe for their screen repairs that they reset the phones. I don't believe. But this could all be eradicated by them simply making a diagnostics section in iOS, which is accessible by everyone, not just vetted people. If they made then it would get rid of all of the privacy issues.
And so I reckon that's where it's going. As much as we can make predictions about Apple making business moves regarding repair, I'd say that if you're going to make another move, if they're going to make any other move, it's going to be that. Surely that it works in their own interest anyway. Another way of saying that is if they're going to grant the independent repair program, if they're going to put that out there in the first place, then that's just the next step. They may as well do that. And you're right, that at that point will possibly shut off anyone who isn't part of the independent repair program at that point from being able to do repairs, because they could easily make that as a part of the same thing, right?
So
they've got repair without a restore, you know?
Yeah, they've got something, they do have something like that. They do have something like that already. It has to be connected by USB, but yeah, it only works if you've got access, if you're vetted, authorized, and have access to the system, which is completely contradictory to the idea that they care about their consumers' privacy. Because if they cared about their consumers' privacy, they would open it up so that everyone could get access to it, including their end user, in order to do diagnostics on the devices, especially because although 1,500 is a large number,
that's a good
point. It's a drop in the ocean compared to the unauthorized repair shops in the world. Give them access to it so that their customers' information is not at risk in any shape or form. If we did that, we wouldn't need the customers that send our devices in for us to do. We wouldn't need them to back up their data and all of that jazz before it arrives with us. And also, if they couldn't back up their device because their screen no longer worked, we wouldn't need to erase their data if we had access to be able to test it in another way.
Yeah, there is something here which I've forgotten, which is not okay for me to forget, which is people should be able to fix their own phones. It's very easy for me to just make this a whole sort of debate between independent repair and authorized repair. But yeah, I don't think I'd like to live in a world knowing where a car manufacturer had designed the vehicle to only be able to be fixed by either themselves or an independent mechanic. I would prefer that I live in a world where I have those two options and a third, which is I know how to fix it myself. I own it, so I can do it. And you're right.
100%.
If we go down that path of what we just said there, that's all good and well for the, in some respects, the obvious ones we're talking about. But also, what about people who know how to do this themselves and just want to be able to just swap out a battery or a screen on their own phone? They're going to get neglected and they're going to get lost in all of this. That's going to end up happening, isn't it? Let's face it. Because if at the end of the day, if you've got a bunch of independent repair shops like us that are then working out this battle between the primary market and that secondary market of the OEM versus independent repair, and that all somehow converges, and there's some sort of compromise and people meet in some sort of utopian place, but that utopian place is still only for the businesses involved with fixing people's phones. What about people who want to do it themselves? I feel that's who's going to fight for them. Who's going to be left to fight for them after all that's sorted out? Mm.
No, you're right. It's layered. There's lots of layers to it, and it is complicated. But yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Okay. Where are we up to now? Let's have a look here. Did you get right down to? We've gone through that. There's a couple of articles here I wanted to bring up. One was this Vice article. The American. We'll get to that. The American Conservative article. Are we up to there? You okay with moving on with that now?
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, so that article I found really interesting. I saw Lewis Rossman talking about this the other day. He had a look at it. It does mention him in the article. And I thought it was an interesting point that he made there, which I thought you might like to talk about, which was the right to repair thing has largely become, it seems to be, a left-wing grassroots movement almost, would you say? Is that is right to repair? I'm sure someone out there, maybe yourself, might tell me no, not really.
So,
but
I've been working with Mr. Louis Rossman, who has an amazing YouTube channel, has been a proponent of right to repair for many years now, and he's been very supportive and helpful with it. But it's been very slow moving, and they've had limited victory. So when we say right to repair, it means something different to every person. Your definition of right to repair would be different to mine. We'd have different ideas of it. What Louis has tried to do, he started a new group. I can talk a bit more on it now that he's gone more public with it, but it's called the Repair Preservation Group, which RPG is a great. I don't think he thought of that, but that's going to make some great memes in time. But he wants to be way more direct with all of this and far more aggressive with it. And he has made a point with it of not tying himself to left or right wing politics. And although because of the environmental impact of making devices non-repairable, it obviously falls into the more left-wing side of politics. He's deliberately trying to make it so that it's not about either. He will speak to everyone and anyone.
Non-partisan, yeah.
And fundamentally, the issue that is at hand is layered, and it branches across all levels of politics, not just the environmental impact. So there are conservatives that are going to be worried about this, that are going to want to be involved as well. So it's really good that Louis is reaching out to everyone.
Yeah, and this article, if anyone wants to take a look at it, I imagine we can link to it as well in the show notes for this, is entitled Apple's Quiet War on Independent Repairmen. And it's a great read. The whole thing from beginning to end is a really nice, for me, fresh perspective that's not often put. And I think that it just goes to show you that this issue is a non-partisan issue. It doesn't require anybody sort of saying, no, we shouldn't be, getting in bed, so to speak, with the other side of the political aisle. It's non-partisan. It's not political at all, really, actually, in some respects. Because the concept, it's fundamental to the concept, is that if it's about ownership, actually. Do I own the thing that I paid the money for? And if I do own it, then the ability to repair it is actually fundamental to really proving to myself whether I own it or not, and let alone anyone else. And that's nonpartisan, I don't think, unless someone wants to tell me out there that I'm some sort of right or left wing loony for saying that. I don't know. I don't think it is, though. I don't see how that's political. So have a read of that article and check out Lewis Rossman's. You call him Louis, don't you? Actually, I'm just noticed that. Does he call himself Louis or Lewis?
I've never actually spoken to him. I've never spoken to him on the phone. He's a very messages type of guy. But I think we're going to be seeing and hearing a lot more of him over the next few months. So between now and August, he's got a GoFundMe, which is at the link in the American Conservative article that will be in the show notes. There's a link to the GoFundMe. He's looking to raise $6 million to start a direct ballot initiative.
6 mil.
6 million. 6 million. He's looking, and he's
bold. Where's he at? Do you know?
Let's have a look. It's been up just over a week, and he's raised 382,180, and he's had at least $100,000 off of on the side off of GoFundMe as well. So he's raised about $500,000 in a week.
Wow, that's incredible.
And
that just goes to show you that people are passionate about this issue.
People care, and honestly, if you go to the GoFundMe and scroll down and just read the comments from people that have, there's 1,369 comments from the people that have donated, and it is so refreshing reading these comments. And it's a lot different to when Mac Rumours or 9 to 5 Mac put out an article which is, on the Monday, Apple are saying they're expanding the IRP, and on the Tuesday, they're saying they're lobbying against it for da-da-da reasons. When you read those comments, sometimes you read them and you think, maybe I'm the only person that thinks the way that I do. But you read the comments on the GoFundMe, and they're really refreshing. They're really refreshing. So it's April now. We've got a few months now until August. He wants to reach his $6 million goal. He's made it it's his full-time job until August to get that going. And if he were to get to the target that he's looking to get to and get to the direct ballot, I think there's a very, very high chance that he can make a difference here.
That's fascinating, because we've talked about the capital R right to capital R repair. I don't want to say the movement, because it's not. That's an organization. What is when I put the capitals there? It's who started that? Who's actually behind all of that? Do you know who's? Yeah,
so right to repair is repair.org. It's a URL, repair.org, and iFixit are very closely tied into it. They are they're very fond of going down the old school legislation route, which may ultimately be the correct way of doing this if Louis fails to get the direct ballot initiative done. But it's very slow moving, and when you're dealing with politicians, you're also dealing with corporate companies that have got buckets of cash that can throw that cash and lawyers and time around wherever they see fit. So you're swimming upstream, which I think is why they've had so much trouble. And if you look over recent years, as the IRP has been built, as it's rolled out, as they've got 1,500 independent repair providers on their side, the whole existing right to repair push has it's allowed that to be created. It's allowed that to happen. Now, what Louis is doing is not, although it is separate to the legislation for right to repair, it is not separating himself, and I know that he's doing it as a separate way of a form of right to repair passing. And like I said to you before, everyone's version of right to repair is slightly different. It might be that the people at the top of repair.org and iFixit have different definitions of right to repair than Louis or yourself or me or other people that are affiliated with the repair preservation program. So what Louis is doing, he's taking his version of right to repair, he's trying to take it to a direct ballot, and he's trying to get it straight to the people so that the people can have a say in it. They very recently had an automotive one, a direct ballot, and it passed. They got it through. So that was a precedent case, and he's hoping to assign the same firm that did the automotive and do it for electronic repair. So it's a really great idea. It's a lot of work for him to do between now and August, but I'm fully supportive of him. I'd like to think anyone listening to this would be as well. And if you haven't donated to the GoFundMe, please click the show notes. Please donate and please support Louis.
Yeah, well said. The closing paragraph I really like of that article, I'll just read it out. It says, "What is not uncertain is what it is all about. The lowercase right to repair is nothing more than the effort to reinstate the individual's rights of ownership. It is a movement so contrary to the new subscription model of life where you are always one payment away from losing it all. An environment of centralized control where everything is always supervised, curated, and monitored by a managerial class increasingly skeptical of the individual will. We are being conditioned to a state of digital serfdom as if it has been algorithmically dictated that individual choice and individuality are no more. The right to repair is the glitch to the property-less future before us." Sounds rather dramatic, and maybe I get succumbed to that language because I am living this life every single day as a business owner of an independent repair store, but it really is I'm going to use a word here, and I might actually not be using it correctly, but there's a word, zeitgeist. And I'm pretty sure that, I don't know if I'm using that word correctly, but I just think that this example of what we're talking about here, which I think when I speak to my own just friends and family out that aren't so in this world, lucky for them, they tend to think it's just a phone, mate. It's just, you're fixing it. It's not that big a deal. But it really is bigger than that, and that paragraph there really does explain, because it's just more along the lines of the big tech issue that keeps getting thrown around in the world, which is completely reasonable to do so because it is a problem, and this is now the hardware version of all of that. So, yeah. I like that. I like to see these kinds of academic, or should I say, well-written work, intellectual work from the other side of the political aisle, from where I often do see it written in the first place. So, well said. His name is Napoleon Linarthatos. I can't really say that properly. I'm sorry if I've said that wrong, but it's a really well-written article, and I highly recommend reading it. It's not very long, and it's straight to the point and succinct. So, on the other side of the spectrum is a Vice article. Did you ever read of that one? Which is
I did.
Entitled "Colorado Denied Its Citizens the Right to Repair After Riveting Testimony." Now, I say the other side of the spectrum because it's just from Vice, and Vice is, I guess, known to be a little bit more left-leaning as a media organisation, which I wish no media organisations were leaning in any way, shape or form, or not the majority that seem to these days. But nevertheless, we've woken up in a world where that's just normal to say. And can you tell us a little bit about this article?
So this article, this article, by the way, that last paragraph in that last article was beautifully written, and
isn't it?
It's really nice to see journalists, to see writers step out of their comfort zone and the fear of upsetting big tech and just being critical. It's really good to see. But this article here from Vice, the bit that really stuck out to me, this covers a load of stuff on the bill which didn't pass. There were too many unanswered questions and the proposed law was too broad, which again speaks to the different versions of right to repair between people. And I'd say that the right to repair that they're going for in the bill is far too powerful. It doesn't need to be that powerful for us to get basic rights. But the thing in this whole article, which again will be in the show notes so that you can click it and you can read it yourself, is it's about Kenny Maestas, Kenny Maestas, who is in a wheelchair. And I'm going to read out a bit of this article. And this really, I didn't even think about wheelchairs at any point. I thought about cars, house appliances, never about wheelchairs. Anyway, Kenny Maestas, who uses a wheelchair, drove this home in his testimony before the committee. Maestas spent a long time in a hospital, and when he came home, his mobility was restricted. An electric wheelchair helped him get around, but it was broken. The right arm of the chair was broken, and the battery would no longer hold a charge. Quote, "Both my son and brothers were capable and ready to do whatever needed to get done. I called on the 14th of December, he told the committee. I was told the next time a tech would be in my area would be the 18th of January. As a rural resident of Colorado, I'm used to a regional delay, but 35 days seemed excessive. Meister said that the electric wheelchair company had the battery and spare parts on file to fix his chair, but the company's procedure required a technician to first inspect the chair before making a repair. It was another 28 days after the tech first arrived before Meistas was mobile again. It was more than 60 days before his chair was working again. Meister says, it's never appropriate to make a human being with a critical care need wait over 2 months for a repair that could have been completed in 2 days, he said. The committee asked Meister no questions.
Wow.
So I mean, the key bit for me in there, and the bit that really grinds my gears is, both my son and brothers were capable and ready to do whatever needed to get done. This guy is saying, this is my wheelchair. I've got my son and my brothers and they're capable and they're ready and we want to do it. Just give us what we need. And the company said,
oh my God.
No. The company said, no, you are going to stay not being able to move in your wheelchair because it's against our policy to keep you safe. Even though the guy who owns the wheelchair is saying, I want to be, it's the 14th of December, I've got Christmas coming up, I just want to be able to get around. Please just send me the parts.
So who's failing here? I mean, if it gets easy for us to point our fingers at the manufacturer, because that's obviously, it just completely looks that way. Is there any way, I like to play, devil's advocate, as we know, is there any way that we can are they complying with some sort of ridiculous laws themselves to do with, because this is now a wheelchair, so there's now more ergonomical, I guess, safety issues. It's dealing in that world where they might be having to comply. Like if something doesn't get fixed properly and then someone hurts themselves from using this wheelchair afterwards, especially because it's dealing directly with that kind of thing. Now these people are having to, so they're saying, no, we can't do that because you'll potentially sue us for being negligent, I guess, along the way.
Your devil's advocate is starting to sound like a Technet executive director, Tim. When he says, I honestly believe,
I'm not wearing a suit and tie now. I swear I'm not wearing a suit and tie right now.
When he says, quote, both my son and brothers were capable and ready to do whatever needed to get done, I think that him being a wheelchair owner and user in Colorado, he would be fully aware himself of any restrictions or any risk to the company. And I mean, even if there were any laws that said anything like that, the company could say, okay, we'll only ship you the parts if you sign this waiver to say that we're not responsible for anything that happens to you after this. And if they repair it incorrectly and it has any safety issues for him, that's fully on his back. And it may be that discussion didn't happen and they would have said that to him. And then this whole quote and this whole testimony would never have happened because he was unaware of some consequences. But I would have taken an educated guess here in that he was on the 14th of December when his wheelchair broke. The guy just wanted to get around for Christmas and see his family, and he just wanted the parts shipped to him as soon as possible and didn't care about the company's policy. And I'd say the company have failed massively here by, all right, you've got policies and you've got policies so that when you scale, the policy is bulletproof so that nothing goes wrong. So that when you're servicing tens of thousands of wheelchairs every day, the failure rate and the re-repairs are as low as possible because you want to be as efficient as possible and serve as many as people as you can. But this customer has said, as a human that has a wheelchair, my son and my brothers want to do it, just give me the parts. And they've just said no at Christmas.
Yeah, just to rub it in. I
just can't fathom. I just can't fathom.
It must have been devastating. Yeah, it must have been completely devastating. I wasn't saying that to be a suit. I was saying that.
I was joking. Because
I know. No. I'm not taking it to heart. I'm not that sensitive. I was actually saying it more that maybe there are silly laws out there that could actually be need modifying so that big companies don't fear being sued for things outside the realms of common sense. That's we keep adding laws over and over and over and over and over to everything to make it to thinking we're doing a service to ourselves, but potentially we're just making things worse in some respects.
Definitely. And this article goes over. It's not just Kenny in his wheelchair. There is a load of stuff in this article that it goes over with the bill and around right to repair. It's worth a read. It covers quite a lot.
Yeah. And we are, I think, moving up to now, again, on my show notes here that I'm looking at, I am a little bit lost.
So 9 to 5 Mac.
Stuff here. Talk to me. Yes,
9 to 5 Mac.
That's where we are.
You see it?
Yep. Yeah,
so 9 to 5 Mac on the 31st of March, so it's a couple of weeks ago now, Apple introduces battery, and this has gone relatively unnoticed, but it says Apple introduces battery recalibration tool for iPhone with iOS 14.5 Beta 6. So let me just Google iOS 14 release. I can't remember the exact date that it was released. September 2020. So it's been out 6 to 7 months now. iOS 14. So this article goes on to say iOS 14.5 coming later this spring includes an update where the battery health reporting system will recalibrate maximum battery capacity and peak performance capability on iPhone 11, iPhone 11 Pro and iPhone 11 Pro Max to address inaccurate estimates of battery health reporting for some users. Symptoms of this bug include unexpected battery drain behavior or, in a small number of instances, reduced peak performance capability. This inaccurate battery health reporting does not reflect an issue with actual battery health. So
this
that means
inaccurate battery health reporting does not reflect an issue with actual battery health. Right.
Yeah, so I'd imagine that references the settings battery health section where it gives you a percentage of your battery health. They're saying that it doesn't affect that. This will be more just battery drain and battery related issues. Now, being that we repair iPhones, it's the battery drain from since the iOS 14 launch has been relatively common. So it doesn't say in this article or from anything that Apple's put out how old the bug is that this is fixing. But I would hazard a guess here that this is fixing the iOS 14 bug that's been with us a good 6 to 7 months. And this is just to show that this is just an example of how issues like this are swept under the carpet and fixed without full information given, full transparency given on what is actually done to fix it and what the problem was,
Yeah. This is, I was reading that there and it says a recalibration. So Apple introduces, the headline of it is Apple introduces a battery recalibration tool for iPhone. What are we getting at? A tool of some sort or a software tool? What's it talking about? I don't get it.
I think it's gonna be automatic where it tries to recalibrate the battery again. But they do go on to say in the article that recalibration of the battery health reporting system was not successful. An Apple authorized service provider can replace the battery free of charge to restore full performance and capacity. It doesn't say whether the device needs to be in warranty or out of warranty for this, and it doesn't explain any of the technicals about how, why, when, what, where. But I would assume from this that even if your phone is out of warranty, if it has a battery issue, they're saying, yeah, we made a boo-boo, we'll replace your battery for free.
I'm just reading that more closely. I can't get around that. It's the way 9 to 5. I mean, is that just me being cynical for no reason? 9 to 5 Mac has found the new calibration tool in the iOS 14.5 code. Mm-hmm. Isn't that using that term as a euphemism? Like it's really they're backpedaling and solving a problem that should never have been there in the first place. But now now we're providing you with a calibration tool for your own benefit inside 14.5? Or am I
I don't like to use
into that?
No, if you read this whole thing and you take the guts out of it, it sounds like a recall. If the recalibration of if what their fix doesn't fix it, take it to Apple and they'll replace the battery free of charge. It sounds to me like they've got a recall on the batteries of the 11, 11 Pro, and 11 Pro Max, but it's not being called a recall. It's being called a recalibration tool that will fix an issue that we didn't tell you was an issue, but we've known about for 6 to 7 months.
Yeah, I don't love this use of different languages that
this is where we could do with
at people.
This is where we could do with Mr. Napoleon Linifartos to be reporting on things like this. I think he'd be a bit more direct and maybe a bit critical. Yeah, but yeah, this is what we get.
I would read anything he wrote on that topic. The next thing we wanted to talk about here was it looks like
you're never going to have seen this. You're never going to have seen this. It's on Twitter, and I know you're not big on Twitter.
I saw this just before, and I saw you had written some notes about this, and I read, and you've got me really interested by this. So you're going to tell us that the Touch ID in the iPhone 13 is definitely going to be serialized.
Oh, I'm not going to tell you that. This is the last part of this episode. It's the last point, and I'm gonna pull some stuff from Twitter user at JIORIKU. Now, he's got some Chinese or Japanese characters in there, so I'm guessing he's from... I wouldn't even try. But it says he's in his I can't, Tim. It says he's a writer for Apple Osofi, which I've never heard of.
This guy.
I've never heard of. But anyway, he's got some information here on the iPhone 13. This is purely rumours, and there's a load of stuff on his Twitter if you go and have a look. But I'm going to pull a couple of bits which are of interest to me. And these things, although they say they're authorised, it does not mean that they're guaranteed to be in the iPhone 13. As devices go through the development process, features are added, colours are added, things are added to it, they test it, and then they get pulled. They may not make the final product, but these look pretty accurate, and I think with other rumours that have come out, this looks pretty good. So the most important thing that he says is Touch ID made the final cut on the iPhone 13. This doesn't mean it's guaranteed to come, it just means that Apple approved it. So that means as the iPhone 13 is going through its development process, they've approved Touch ID. Now, Touch ID, if you historically go over the older devices before the iPhone X that had Touch ID, when it comes to repair, if you swap that unique home button with another unique home button, the Touch ID, the fingerprint sensor software function, is deliberately disabled by the way that Apple have coded iOS, so that the Touch ID software fingerprint reader does not work. It only works with the original one. And the only people that can calibrate a new button are Apple or an authorized Apple repairer. Now, to put that in really basic terms, if you took two brand new iPhone 8s, for example, and you took the home button and swapped them over from each other, the fingerprint sensor would not work on either phone. But if you swap them back again, they would work. So the home button would work absolutely fine. They were both original, pulled from phones, but they're paired uniquely to each phone. Now, he goes on to say that...
Can I just jump in while you're looking for that?
Go on.
This seems to be that the timing is... It's pretty much what we've said, isn't it? Like, if the thing that independent repair has been fearing, for lack of a better term, for many, many years now, is basically since the 5S thing back in 2013, 14, something like that, is, wow. So if you can do this for a home button, you could do it for anything, including, like, literally anything. So... Correct. Where do you draw the line? And we've all said, it could all happen. It could happen overnight. They just release an update and everything is just suddenly, irreplaceable. And then the reaction to that was, well, that can't happen, because if they were to do that, can you imagine the public backlash against overnight just only being able to go to an authorized chain? There's not enough of them in the world. They couldn't handle that capacity. Then fast forward, independent repair program gets introduced. Now, a couple of years later, now worldwide domination of the independent repair program. Yeah. So it's going worldwide. And then, in time for them to iron out any of those hurdles for the iPhone. I mean, when's iPhone 13 is probably due in 6 months now, if that's July, the model August. We're talking about. Yeah, unless there's going to be a 12 S and 13 is actually the year. I don't know. When they're talking about iPhone 13, are they actually talking about is that just another term for the next one that's coming out in October, do you think? Yeah.
It is. But you are absolutely right. We are just dealing with rumours with this, and it may be that this is all information that he's receiving from a reliable source, which is about next year's launch, not this year's. But it would make
18 months away. Yeah. Either or. Yeah.
But it would make sense in this COVID world where we're wearing masks. It would make sense to reintroduce Touch ID.
Touch ID, yeah.
But he goes on to say, so he says a load of stuff about a load of other stuff which is unrelated. It says, I don't really need to say this, but the new Touch ID display will be serialized. The Touch ID sensor will be nearly fused to the glass and will require the original display to work. The display serial and Touch ID serial will be linked to the same chip. Another hit to user repair. And he says ultrasonic is the final choice for Apple. Their method is more reliable and secure in their test instances than a light-based option like some other OEMs use. Now, when he says some other OEMs use, if we look at other OEMs that use in-screen Touch ID, the most obvious one would be Samsung, and they use both light-based and ultrasonic. Their flagship phones use ultrasonic fingerprint readers. And if you look at Apple with the iPhone 12, the 12 mini and the 12 Pro Max display panels, the core panels, are believed to come from Samsung. They are Samsung display panels. They have one flex, not two like the other. So it looks like Apple they've trialed Samsung with the 12 mini and the 12 Pro Max. It's gone relatively successfully. And now they're looking at the in-screen Touch ID as an alternative biometric option to Face ID for this world where we're all wearing masks, which would make sense. But they're also going to enforce the serialization on the Touch ID so that if you were to swap the display, the Touch ID would be disabled because of the way that they had coded iOS. And I refurbished Samsung Edge screens. The S10 screen, the newer Samsungs, you are not removing the fingerprint reader from the back of the display. It's fused into the display. You're not removing and reusing it. It's simply it's not happening. So this would mean that anyone that were to do a screen repair on a iPhone 13 or whatever they were to call it, it would have the fingerprint sensor would be disabled because Apple had decided that they wanted, even if it was an original board screen, it would be disabled because Apple have decided they want to disable that software feature for the end user.
Now, do you think, along the way, we're always talking about, oh, no, none of my customers actually care about whether the Touch ID works anymore after I do the job, and no one cares about the notification, and no one cares. And I love to watch you comment on that online. I tell you what, I get the popcorn out and I sit on a Friday evening with a beer and I just tune in to TV Ricky and I read everything. It's fantastic. I love it. I think sometimes I go to actually write something myself and then I'm like, oh, Ricky's got me. He's already written something along those lines. So I don't mind joining in sometimes myself. But all the time when people are saying, I don't care, my customers don't care about any of this anyway, even if we grant this, that is happening to some degree, I don't know. The point, and let's not get caught in the weeds about, debating that right now, but surely we're getting to the point where now you're going to get a lot of people drop out. Like if you were to, if they're just that Touch ID on the front there, unless it's just a personal thing from myself, I think a lot of people won't be willing to accept that. That's just going to become like my thumb just goes there on the screen right now and now it's suddenly gone and you're going to tell me that I have to just give that up now just because I'm having my screen replaced. I think you're going to lose a serious amount of people. And my thought is that if that's true and other people are thinking that, if Apple's thinking that, if other repair stores are just thinking that that's the truth, the timing with the independent repair program going worldwide is not coincidental, right? So it means that aftermarket parts or refurbished parts, they're not going to be able to get around it, and that will be okay because the spread of independent repair providers around will actually pick up all of the demand that's out there for original parts being used, right? What do you think?
Yeah, no, that sounds about right. And I mean, people always say, oh, my customers don't care about the notification. My customers don't care. No, of course they don't. That's why they're your customers. If they cared about it, they wouldn't be going to you. They'd be going to someone else. They wouldn't tell you. They just go somewhere else. They're not going to tell you, I would go with you, but I care about that notification. They're not going to bother with that. They're just going to go to Apple or go to the authorized repairer. But yeah, I think Touch ID on the iPhone 13 would be huge. Even the thought of it, just to think that you would own a device and you would lose a feature like that just because you were to use unauthorized repairer. It's just absurd. It is absurd. Absurd is the right word to use.
Or fix it yourself.
Yeah. Or fix it yourself. It is absurd.
Yeah.
And the sad thing about it is, as the phones have got newer, they're easier to repair. The design of them, like they're actually designed now so that they're easier to repair. They're a better product now. They're a better product now than they ever have been. And at the point where they're getting easier and they're thinking about the people repairing them, is the point where they're trying to cut out large portions of the repairers. But the important thing for me in this is that the aftermarket panels the iPhone 12 and iPhone 12 mini, iPhone 12, iPhone 12 Pro, iPhone 12 Pro Max, it's not really worth, for a third-party repair that does not refurbish screens in-house, it's not really worth offering repairs for those because the display panels that are offered are still really expensive. And you cannot, even if you can beat Apple on price, you can't beat Apple on quality because the panels that you're buying are not as good quality as the Apple panels. And this we're looking at a 6 to 7 month old device here. 6 to 7 months for that. How long is it going to be until these panels for the 12 series are going to be cheap enough in order for a customer to accept the inferior quality of the aftermarket panel at the appropriate price? And then when you look at the iPhone 13, it's going to be even harder. It's going to take even longer.
So it's interesting. So then they go. Are we saying that they're going to be going from one monopoly to another? So they're basically at the moment, and for the last however many years, they've done their best to monopolize the repair market by notifications and serialization and these kinds of things, and then just not selling parts outside of their own supply chain, and then being punitive with their evidently with the way in which they go after small independent repair shops for IP theft for questionable reasons. Obviously, again, I don't support anyone stealing anyone's intellectual property, but there is evidence of them going after, and it seems like they're just sort of being manipulative, should I say, with laws, rather than actually genuinely fearing that anyone was actually doing anything against them in the first place in that respect. Are we basically saying that they're moving from one monopoly to another? So they were monopolizing the whole repair market. Now are they sort of conceding a little bit and saying, okay, so we're going to sell parts and then monopolize that market? Because that's the next problem, isn't it? That I don't know if we've spoken about that much, is now they can really control the price of parts and therefore just price consumers out of the market. Even though we were once able to offer things for far cheaper, it's just like now they're going to kill aftermarket parts, they're going to kill refurbished parts, and now we're going to just sell our own parts, and everyone's going to love that because you all get original parts. But guess what, everybody? We're going to set the prices of that. So I imagine the price of parts is just going to go up and up and up and up and up here. I mean, there's nothing to stop that, is there? There's no regulation. There's nothing because there's no one else making the parts other than themselves. That is a monopoly of parts by definition.
Well, historically, that's all that's happened anyway. And they don't, when the devices age and they become older, they don't reduce the repair costs in the same way that the value of the device depreciates over time, which then gives the device owner an incentive to buy a new device rather than repair their old device, because an official authorized repair of their old device would be 70 to 80%, maybe even 100% the cost of just getting a grade A used version of that device again. So as time goes on and as the newer devices with the OLED screens depreciate more and more, you're going to see that the repair cost is going to be more than the device cost. And I think the iPhone X is getting close to this now anyway.
And the other thing that I think a lot of the independent repair guys, and if you're still listening to this podcast, I think it's worth considering is that when you sign into contracts, you sign to those terms and conditions, obviously, of that contract. But I think it's really important that people remember that there's what is happening right now is not necessarily what will be the case in the future. So I don't mean that Apple's going to, renege and go back on the terms of the contract with you. I'm saying that if by design they could start designing the phones in, certain ways that you'd never considered, where right now it's like, okay, well, this is the world we live in. They're doing this currently. They're pairing parts to phones. They're doing this and that. And therefore, as long as it stays just the way it is right now, then with that premise, I'll sign the contract. But once you're in and once everybody's involved with this now, then there's nothing to say that they can't introduce other things either by design with the actual hardware itself or anything else along the way, or requirements, even clerically, admin-related stuff. Like now we're requiring you do this thing as a process in your business. Now we're requiring that. I mean, maybe I'm wrong there. Is that more for the authorized chain, and therefore this independent repair thing is just buying parts, and Apple, there's nothing like that along the way that they require? I imagine there must be some admin things that they do require of the independent guys to do, like sending parts back. You can't just refurbish their parts. You got to send things back, right? Okay, so there's no reason why they can't introduce more and more and more and more things like that as well.
Red tape.
And that's really worth considering.
You're talking about just basic red tape around processes and that type of stuff. Yeah, you're 100% right. And I mean, we'll just have to see how it evolves. Hopefully, they've got good intentions. Yeah. But I mean, everything that we've described over the years is coming true. And to end, just to finish the episode and to finish on a positive point. And we did touch on this in a previous episode, but the ultrasonic, if they have gone with that with the iPhone 13, is the same design that Samsung use. And if anyone were to ask them, why have you serialized the in-screen Touch ID, their argument is going to be privacy, safety, security, the same things they always use. However, as I said in the previous episode, there is very little to no evidence to prove that the Samsung devices that have used this technology for years have inferior or even a vulnerability with security or privacy that would require the in-screen Touch ID to be serialized in the way that Apple would do it if they followed their previous models. So it would be nice to see, if there are any writers or journalists listening to this, that if they do release the iPhone 13 with Touch ID and it is serialized to the screen, simply asking, how can you use the argument of security and privacy for the end user when Samsung have done it for years with no security? Now, with Samsung, if you buy a new Samsung service screen part, a new service pack display, and you move all of the innards over to the new display, the in-screen Touch ID works absolutely fine. No calibration needed. It works. So for that reason, Apple should not serialize it in the way that they have done previously.
Unless they can make a really good case for saying that somehow there was a security flaw in any of the Samsung,
which I'd love to see.
It hasn't been picked up by them.
I'd love to
right?
see.
But you'd think we'd know that by now, right? Something would have happened.
I would think
to cause that.
Yeah. I think so, yeah.
Okay, should we leave it there?
We'll leave it there. It's been nice speaking to you, Tim. Thank you very much.
Always. Speak to you soon.
Speak soon. Bye.